council meeting, and to any of our community who may be joining us for this council meeting this afternoon. Very warm welcome to you as well. Our members of the community who are with us, great to have you here in the chamber today, and as a very important agenda as we work through it today. Can I ask Councillor Heki to lead us in a karakia? Kia ora.
Kia ora tātai. Takine rā te kawa ko te kawa nui, ko te kawa roa, ko te kawa whakatiki-tiki āwhua mai no I o tiki-tiki te rangi. I tipu ko te pū, ko te wea, ko te rito, ko te take, ko te pūkenga, ko te wānanga, ko te taura, ko te tauira. Tēnei ka hao ki runga ki te tipua, kunga ki te kāhui o Ngāriki, uhi wero tau mai te Māori, haumi e, hui e, tāi ki e. Kia ora tātai.
Kia ora. Ngā mihi. Thank you, Councillor Heki. Apologies today received from Councillor Teo Skipworth and Councillor Jessup, and also calling for any leave of absence. Happy to move from the chair. That has been those accepted. Any seconder, Councillor Sholem. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you. That's carried. Conflicts of interest, councillors, can I remind you to declare those conflicts of interest at the appropriate time. Item 4, there are no minutes to be confirmed today. Moving on to item 5, the Tuia 2024 end of year report. Unfortunately, one of our Tuia is sick today and they're going to come in together on the 12th of December. So I'd just like to move a motion that this report is left lying on the table and addressed at the council meeting on the 12th of December. I'm happy to move the motion from the chair, seconded by Councillor Kerr. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you. That's carried. Right. Now we move on to item 6, and this is a paper that has come to you today, councillors, that has been in process for 18 months. A very big, thorough and drawn-out process. The adoption of the draft Napier and Hastings Future Development Strategy. Just some opening comments from myself. We are required by the National Policy Statement for Urban Development 2020 to prepare and make publicly available the Future Development Strategy every 6 years and then review our strategy regularly. The purpose of an FDS is to guide integrated, strategic and long-term planning and decision-making. In this way, it sets the high-level policy vision for accommodating growth and plays an important policy role in terms of informing and preparing council long-term plans, infrastructure strategies, and regional and district plans and policies. I take this opportunity to thank our staff for the enormous amount of work and our respective organisations as we've worked through this together as a region, who have worked with the consultants Barker and Associates and the Future Development Strategy Joint Committee to develop the draft Napier Hastings Future Development Strategy. It is very clear from the substantial documentation, I don't know if you've read, but on my desk we have 5 volumes, about that high, with all the technical attachments for this agenda, and the work being done by our team to date has been very comprehensive, like it's never been done before. Detailed and very complex. Analysis and assessment of large quantities of information within decision frameworks is challenging on many levels within an environment of many competing priorities. The Chief Executive confirms in his covering report that our draft Future Development Strategy satisfies the statutory requirements of future development strategies under the National Policy Statement for Urban Development. There will likely be a divergence of opinion between councillors and between councils regarding what should be included and excluded in a draft FDS. This divergence in opinion is to be expected. Some of the issues in the FDS are hard, and opinions in the community, and perhaps by experts too, will vary. Those opinions between our councillors and councils vary at this preliminary stage, and this document reflects that. This process to come is designed to draw a focus on those differences, give everyone a chance to explain why they hold opinions they do, and come to a rational outcome by mid-2025. Our job as governors today is to adopt the draft FDS for public consultation under the special consultative procedure in the Local Government Act. This consultation process allows our community to engage with and submit into our FDS strategy. The three partner councils will consider all opinions and viewpoints for adoption of the final FDS in mid-2025. In essence, the draft FDS is saying to our community, this is the work we have done to date and the evidence and the reasoning that have been applied to develop a draft FDS. What do you think? Please tell us what you think via your submissions. Accordingly, I encourage us to focus our deliberations today at a macro level, at a high level, on considering if our draft FDS provides a good basis, a statement of proposal for the community consultation, and for our community to input into the ongoing FDS process. This is just the start. This is not the finish. A failure by partner councils to publicly notify our draft FDS may create some legal risks for councils, as they will be electing not to comply with the legal requirements of the FDS and the National Policy Statement. This could risk Crown intervention or judicial review proceedings and the challenge that Council's decision not to notify the draft FDS submissions, and that's why we're doing this important mahi today. I now hand over to the Chief Executive, who has been part of this process, to make his opening comments.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good afternoon, councillors. But take the report as read. It is a significant piece of work that's occurred over the last 18 months, and I do want to acknowledge and thank the work of the Joint Committee, the staff and the consultants. Important to point out that the Joint Committee, in terms of reference agreed to by the three councils, has acted as a steering group over this process in the last 18 months. It comprises two representatives from each of the three councils, Napier Hastings and the Regional Council, and two representatives from each of our mana whenua partners across Mangaharuru, Tangatu, Mana Ahuriri and Tamatea, Port Kai Whenua. As the Mayor said, there is no easy trade-offs when it comes to land use planning decisions, when the objectives include statutory provisions around the management of natural hazards to things that have been very important for this council around the protection of our plains and fertile soils and the national policy statements that exist with that regard in terms of highly productive land. As the Mayor said, there is likely to be divergent views amongst this table and across other council tables in terms of the inclusion or not of particular areas of land. But as the Mayor said, this is the start of a process. HDC, as the administering authority, is tasked with the administration of this process and the formal consultation process, and the need to be with our community clear, transparent and impartial in the management of the consultation requirements under the Local Government Act, and that affected parties be given the opportunity to be heard and that decision makers should be unbiased. As you know, one of the recommendations before you is that on the adoption of a statement of proposal for public consultation is that those submissions are heard by a panel of qualified independent commissioners, up to 5, that will hear and ultimately make recommendations back to the three councils where the decisions rights sit in mid-2025. Obviously, our team's taken legal advice about how we deal with the fact that we might not get consensus across the three partner councils at this stage, but what we need to be clear about is that the views of the councils are reflected and that the public can see those views of the councils in the adoption of any statement of proposal. So, in conclusion, Your Worship and councillors, 18 months to get to this point. It is getting to the point of the start line. I would say, which I think is important, is an FDS is important as a policy instrument, but it provides no presumption that what's included in an FDS will be developed, because there are a whole lot of other processes that apply, namely the RMA, And these processes are never static. It's why they are reviewed often. And just to make the point that in the draft FDS, there are some quite notable differences from HPUDs. It's proposed that things that were in HPUDs, Tomoana, Wall Road and Murdoch are not included in the FDS going forward. So just to make the point that these things are not static, they are dynamic strategies, and ultimately there is no presumption just because something is included in the FDS that it will be developed, because it's still got to meet all of the legal requirements that are prescribed in the RMA.
And the reasons that the Joint Committee agreed to remove those areas is because they are highly productive plains land. So they have been removed. Can I invite Mr. Craig Scott and Mr. Rowan Wallace to come forward, please? You thought you might sit down there, but no. Now is the hot seat. And councillors, I'm going to take questions first, and then we move into debate. So first of all, any questions from councillors? Councillor Corbyn.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is about clarification of the recommendations. If we pass the recommendations as they are, does that mean the 2 middle road blocks are included in the FDS or excluded from the FDS?
So just through you, Your Worship, yes, the recommendations as they stand at the moment would be clear that you would be adopting the draft FDS as it was presented to the Joint Committee. So that would include Middle Road, the reserve area and the extension.
On that basis,
Any questions? Taking questions at the moment. Councillor Dixon.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Just a question around 6.12. Removing middle road sites from the draft FDS would result in a drop in greenfield capacity for Havelock North from 910 dwellings to 270 dwellings. Does that include how many sites have we currently got under development in Havelock North? I'm thinking of Iona and those that are really under development.
Thank you.
Through you, Your Worship. We have approximately 1,100 under development at the present time.
So this extra 270 would almost make it up to 1,400.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Butto.
Thank you, Your Worship. Couple of questions. For one, if Middle Road was excluded, would the FDS still be able to meet its obligations legally?
I'll start, Your Worship. Yeah, look, Middle Road across the reserve area and the extension area has a capacity of 660 dwellings. I think that it would be officers' advice that it would not have a material impact on the short term if it was excluded. And as the Mayor's already pointed out, we are required to monitor and review these strategies on a regular basis. But the facts of it are, in the overall housing capacity assessment, it provides for 660 dwellings towards the total capacity that's assessed to be needed over the life of the FDS.
Councillor Butto.
On the exclusion of satellite settlements, I've heard from a number of residents that through the HPUDs process, satellites were identified in places like Maraikako, Tiawonga, and I was curious as to know the reasoning for their exclusion from the future development strategy.
Thank you. It's a very good question. We spent a lot of time on that. Yes, thank you, Mr. Scott. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yes, so that was a decision that was brought to the Joint Committee in an early stage around where development should occur, and there was the consideration that it should occur in close proximity to town, and intensification was always to be a priority. So there was a lot of debate around that. The decision was made to remove those satellites because the numbers could be achieved through consolidated urban form, so to speak, so intensification plus those areas identified close to town. There is something still, there is a page within the draft FDS that says that rural residential and those outer residential areas could still be looked at through another form, such as a plan change to the district plan, and that is something that could be provided going forward.
Thank you.
And final
Councillor Butter?
question, when it comes to the hearings, those proposed to be in person as well as written, or just one?
When it comes to the hearings, written or,
Through you, Your Worship, when it comes to the hearings, are you asking whether people are able to come in person and present their submissions? Absolutely, there is that opportunity.
Councillor Kerr?
Thank you, Worship. I'm interested in the Middle Road sites, so Middle Road and the extension site. The fact that these soils are highly productive, class 1 and 2. I'm really interested in the conversation around why these two blocks were included, and then I note that the Joint Committee then excluded them. Can you just expand more on the discussion around those sites, please?
Through you, Chair. The inclusion was partly to do with finding that locational range of sites. We also got additional advice that fed into the multi-criteria analysis from Ag First, from a soil expert there, to say that it was not as productive as other LUC2. Primarily LUC2 is the Middle Road area. And so, yeah, we fed that into to that multi-criteria analysis, and that came up with the recommendation from Barkers and Associates, supported by officers. And the removal from the Joint Committee was around that LUC2, primarily high quality soils. So that was the consideration there. That was
Your Worship, if I may. I think my question is around the government policy statement. We used to call it fertile soils, but it's now, I think, highly productive land. So does that not override any planning that we do?
Through you, Your Worship. In terms of providing for housing needs, there's another national policy statement, urban development, that requires us, as the Mayor has said, to provide for future housing needs. Both of those need to sort of be considered together, and they can be factored off against one another. So we need to provide for land in the most efficient and effective place, and there is that ability under the National Policy Statement for Highly Productive Land to consider land, but we have to show that it is needed and that there are other options that have been considered. So that all has been factored in through this multi-criteria analysis in terms of the productive capability of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey?
Thank you. 6.9 refers to Riverbend Road. I'm just seeking clarification that it is highlighted in red in the schedule. The vote was 3-3. So does that remain within still?
Nigel, do you want to answer that, or Craig? Craig. Mr. Cameron, thank you.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. So we should probably just distinguish here the recommendations of the Joint Committee were the Joint Committee's recommendation on the FDS for consideration by the Council. In their vote in the Joint Committee, it was a 3-3 with the remainder of the committee members abstaining. So the motion wasn't carried.
Thank you. And then just one following question, just in regards to the communications strategy and just the timing of when we are going out for consultation. And I understand, there was a couple of meetings that decisions were deferred with were coming to us today. The regional council received a bit of flack earlier in the year around when they did their consultation, which was in the January period. Ours is in the lead up to Christmas. How are we sure that that's going to be an effective approach?
Consultation and engagement? Scott?
Thank you, Worship, for you. Yeah, we had a discussion about this. We have also notified things that have gone through the January period before, and what we've found is that a lot of consultants and that sort, lawyers and that side of things take that January break, and so the preference was to aim to get it done prior this side of Christmas, and to give that full month on this side of Christmas, where more people are likely to be able to do that, to do those submissions. So yeah, that was a preference over a January submission period where we've sort of got criticism in the past.
Mr Cameron?
Mr Scott, you might just like to make it clear this is a consultation period and the submission period will be, I think, in March next year.
Oh yeah, so this is for submissions to come in is this period, but the submissions will be heard in,
Yeah, no, I was
approximately
more
March,
interested in this
Submissions
initial
coming
period.
in the next month, yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Fowler?
Thank you, Worship. Through your Worship, could someone please explain in terms of the government's fast-tracking legislation what overlay this may have on the decisions of the future development strategy?
Thank you. Who would like to tackle that one, fast tracking?
I think Ryan's
have a go.
Have a go.
The fast track provisions aren't officially legally in place yet. I think they're being adopted prior to Christmas. So while we have a list of applications that have been put forward, legally they're not in place. So we have to proceed with our future development strategy in the interim, and the fast track provisions really are, basically the approval process that any of these sites that are identified in the future development strategy would have to go through ultimately. So this is really just a fast track process may end up, getting ahead of the future development strategy if it is one of the first cabs off the rank. So we may end up with a situation where we get a site that goes through the fast track process that hasn't been identified in our future development strategy.
Yeah. So through your Worship, so there is potential that a fast track could override, if it goes ahead, our legislation, what we may decide in the future development strategy.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
And just for the sake of completeness in terms of the list that's outlined in 6.10, just to be clear, I mean, Odering's site has already been issued resource consent through a hearings process, and there are 2 sites in there that have been accepted onto the A list of the fast track, one being Ahuriri Station and the other being the Arataki extension area.
Councillor Harvey?
Yeah, thank you. I just had one other, this be a Rowan one, I think, but I'm just interested in, with HPUDs, how much of what was in HPUDs and whether it's a percentage or what that actually has carried through to be developed.
So through you, Your Worship. Yes, there are a number of sites that were in HPUDs that have carried through into the future development strategy. So we have Kaiapo, we have Lyndhurst Extension, we have Arataki Extension, which was a reserve area in HPUDs, so it wasn't an identified greenfield growth area. And we also have one of the Middle Road sites was a reserve area in HPUDs as well. So those reserve areas were areas that could be considered if one of the other priority areas fell over for any reason.
Thank you. Probably didn't ask the question appropriately. It was just back to what Mr. Bickle had said earlier around, I'm just interested in what's been realised. So, you know, everything that's was put into HPUDs, yes, some has carried forward into what will be the FDS. I'm just interested in, you know, really, realistically, at the end of the day, it was 20-30% of what was within it has been realised, that type of thing.
Do we have a percentage?
Not a percentage. Yes, sorry, I misinterpreted what you're saying. So I would say probably about 60% of what was in HPUDs has been realised to date. So that's probably a ballpark figure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right, no further questions. Now we move into debate, and I'll come back to you, Councillor Corbyn.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to move an amendment to exclude the 2 middle road blocks from our recommendation on the FDS.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Monteputo Hendry, second. Come back to Councillor Fowler.
Yes, Your Worship, is it okay just to offer my opinion on the,
On the motion.
on that? No, I wanted to make general.
Oh, sorry,
debate,
Mr. Cameron.
Through Madam Chair, we don't actually have a motion on the table. We're on straight to amendment. Might I just clarify with the member, Councillor Corbyn, so are you proposing to move the recommendations with an amendment that the 2 middle road areas are excluded?
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. Sorry, can you
So that is the motion.
That'll be the motion. You've gone straight to
with the
amendment.
amendment that middle road is excluded?
So for clarification, your motion is the recommendations as they stand in the paper,
Yep.
amended to exclude the 2 middle road.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor
Your
Fowler.
Worship,
So
I
we'll
have
now,
to
we'll debate the motion that's on the table. Thank
So am I
you.
allowed to offer my opinion on
Yes,
this?
certainly.
Yep, so, Your Worship, I believe in terms of the history can teach us valid lessons, but not if we don't learn from them. So I'm, and more referring to Ahuriri Station land, I have photos. I'm trying not to appear as if I'm in court showing exhibits A, B and C. But at various times post-earthquake, 2015. So in terms of those sites, the flood threat, if there's any development, I believe we should learn from history and that should not be allowed, but there will be a due process, obviously, that will follow through. And just in conclusion, I am an advocate for saving our soils, but the 2 middle road blocks, I believe, in my view, whether it be 10, 20 years, I believe the temptation to develop that land, either as a reimagining of the village centre or for housing, will be too great for a future council. It's almost like 2 teeth missing that need to be replaced. So I believe that will be hard for future councils to resist to develop. So in summary, I believe the Ahuriri Station land is unsuitable, and we want to avoid what we could probably say about past decisions. Why on earth did they let that happen?
Thank you. Very valid point. Thank you, Councillor Fowler. Councillor Sholem.
Your Worship, not debate but a question, if I may, just from the previous speakers. Looking at 6.10, I see that the Ahuriri Station is the most significant potential development in there with 1,000 potential dwellings, and that the removal of the 2 middle road sites takes out roughly 660 dwellings, which then later in the report it says would be amply made up for by the Ahuriri Station development. Have I read that correctly? I'm just trying to make sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and I understand that under the NPS, we're looking at least sufficient development capacity. I guess the thing I'm interested in understanding is, whilst on paper that's sufficient development capacity, if the most significant development, which is the Ahuriri Station development, were not to proceed, would that leave us with a tangible shortfall in dwellings? I'm just trying to understand the risk.
Well, I think we had that question. Yeah, thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, Mr. Bickle did answer that question to a degree, so there wouldn't be a tangible shortfall. One of the recommendations, so it would get more finely balanced, and I guess the other recommendation that the officers have had is that the locational balance of land would also be sort of more difficult to achieve by putting all your eggs in one basket for those numbers, so to speak. So, yeah, I guess the overall broader concept is the greater area, different areas that we have for development, the better balance the strategy is.
Thank you. And through you, Worship, I'd like to hear some other speakers before I come to my opinion. Thank you.
Now, could we focus, please, back on the motion that is on the table? Councillor Kerr.
Your Worship, I support the motion that's on the table as it is. I would like us to consider whether we would make an additional recommendation, and I haven't got the wording right, but in essence that our council would not support houses being built in areas of natural hazards or floodplains. Picking up on Councillor Fowler's comments around let's learn from the past. I will need some help with wording of that if there's others that would support that additional recommendation.
Thank you. Could I ask speakers, as we come to you, to say whether you agree with an additional recommendation that highlights the importance of building any future dwellings or industrial expansion in areas away from natural hazards where we can keep our community safe. Going back to Councillor Butto.
Thank you, Your Worship. I support the motion that's on the table here today. I think that in the absence of a regional spatial plan, this is our number one planning document really for the two urban centres and our region. And I am very happy or keen that Middle Road is not included in that. I think my core objection to it is that it is our fertile plains, they are what our economy, our jobs, our identity to a degree relies on. I agree that there are some arguments in favour of Middle Road. Its productive capacity is constrained to a degree. My concern is that I don't see enough surety through the rest of the FDS that this is the last piece of productive soil to be used. And so therefore, I think it comes back down to the principle of it. Until that surety can be seen, have to oppose it as it comes up. We don't really want to keep eating away at the Hiratonga Plains as we have in the past with where Hastings is built. I'm unhappy that the satellite settlements have been excluded that were in HPUDs. I think there was an expectation that was kind of built through HPUDs and them being in there. And I think it would be great to see submissions on that as they come through, and I'm sure they will come. And I'd be very happy to see that flavour come through in that commissioner process. I will say that I think we are in a housing crisis. We do need to find as much land for housing as we can. That said, we need to make it available in places that aren't flood prone, that don't have natural hazard risks. And so I'd very much support any recommendations that show this council's commitment to not building in dumb places. I mean, we have spent almost $50 million over the last year buying out houses. We can't be put in a situation like that again into the future. And an acknowledgement to the staff and to the Joint Committee, massive process, so much work. And I think some of the housing intensification goals and the diversity of housing outcomes or provision is really laudable. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butto. Just picking up on rural residential, Mr. Scott, did you want to add anything else for Councillor Butto on rural residential about the inclusion?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, well, I fully expect there will be a lot of submissions that will come through that. We did have a lot of rural residential sites put forward through the call for opportunities, so that will be fully addressed I believe, through the hearings process as well. So
Thank you. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Worship. I support Middle Road not being included for the following reasons. It's highly productive soil, it's fertile, and we have more than sufficient site capacity in Havelock North already. It'll put pressure on our roads, it'll put pressure on our bridges, it'll put pressure on our infrastructure. The more greenfields we develop, the less likelihood we are of having developers move into medium or high density areas. So I'd avoid all the greenfields as much as possible. And as far as flood prone areas and their potential flood risk, avoid all those as well. So wherever they are, if they're flood prone, flood risk, we don't want them in our plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Councillor Watkins.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I too support the exclusion of the Middle Road sites. The reason being, I've always promoted Hastings as the fruit bowl of New Zealand. And to grow fruit, you have to plant trees on the best land. And that's some of the best land, so that's my reason.
Councillor Watkins, do you support the inclusion of an extra
Yes.
recommendation?
Yes,
I'll
I do,
ask the staff
yes.
to craft something up because there seems to be a majority of councillors that are supporting that. Councillor Fowler.
Yes, thank you, Bishop. I just want to clarify that I am against I would like it excluded, the Middle Road from development, just to be clear. I was just making the point that I think in future it will be hard for councils not to go there, but to clarify that position for me.
Support the motion on the table.
I do.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you. I also support the motion on the table, but I'm interested to see how this one is framed up and whether there is an option to also, and it's more for what goes out to the community, but as we are looking at natural hazards and concerns around those, we also want to protect our fertile plains. And I want to make sure that that is actually as strongly referenced as we possibly can. So I'm not sure whether that sits, where that sits, but we've just got this to check at the moment.
So the mover, if you wish to add another recommendation that captures the importance to Heretaunga Hastings about protecting our fertile plains, I'll give you a minute to think about that and I'll take some other speakers. Councillor Nixon.
Thanks, Your Worship. One of the things that springs to mind to me is, and protecting the fertile soils is fine, but presumably with the buyout, we have actually gained a significant amount of fertile soil that had sort of been turned into lifestyle and other properties. I'd just be interested to know, did that get taken into account with the committee when they were considering this issue, and have we taken into account considering the Middle Road
So that's a question to the council, to the officers. Councillor Nixon's asking whether or not any of the voluntary buyout acquisition of land has been included in figures of extension of fertile plains.
Through you, Your Worship, I'll start. No, because it's actually not that material. The vast majority of the voluntary buyouts we've done, we haven't acquired the land. The owners have retained the land. We've bought out their residential right, and most of that land has basically been used for highest and best land use, which is going back into cropping and orchards.
That's fine, and yes, I thought that was the answer. Could I just, because you're asking for comments as much as anything, and I do support the motion that's in front of us. I do worry that when you look at weather events, and I'm not talking just the most recent cyclone, but over a much longer period, yeah, we've seen flooding, unfortunately, particularly in our sister city, and I think it's important that we don't make land available that then puts people in the difficult situation sometime in the future where they get flooded out. And I think the council has a responsibility to avoid doing that, to protect future residents from problems.
So Councillor Nixon, that H recommendation up there hopefully captures your views. So I'll give you a minute to have a look at that. Thank you.
Yeah, that looks good. That's what I was really talking to.
Thank you, councillor Nixon. Councillor Sholem, I'll just take two more speakers. I think we've got a clear direction here today.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'm joining the chorus of support for the motion as it's being evolved on screen in front of me. I'm proud of us as a council for not trying to rewrite the draft FTS on the fly, but instead keeping high level focus on protection of people through appropriate use of land, and the hearings process will be a solid one where the community can voice any dissenting views.
Thank you, councillor Sholem. Councillor Hickey, last speaker.
Kia ora tātou. Just also like to support the recommendations that are on the table, but also note and acknowledge that the values and aspirations of mana whenua have been acknowledged, and that their aspirations will be identified in the future, what is appropriate for them. I just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you, councillor. No mahi. I'll come back now to the mover, councillor Corbyn and councillor Monteputo Hendry. I just want to see if you wish to add about protecting our fertile soils, our highly productive land. Councillor Corbyn, if you wish to add a recommendation, aye.
Yes, I'd like to add that to the recommendation.
You've included it there. Yes, protection of land. Yes. I'll give everyone a minute just to read. You can see it in red.
I just wonder whether that piece about highly fertile soils reads correctly. We're directing it away from locations where
I think that's a new sentence, team. I think that this is a strong statement about safely mitigated full stop, and that the extra piece about protection of use of land 1, 2 and 3 fertile soils needs to be a separate sentence. Thank you. I'll give you a minute just to sort that out, because it's these are both very, very important parts of this FDS and have been in the last 18 months. Can I just ask while we're doing that, Mr. Scott, could you just, and Rowan, can you just highlight to our council what we hope to get an intensification in the CBD? What are our, because this is a very, very critical part, and not been expanding on our fertile plains, but actually intensification. So could you just give the councillors a bit of an overview?
There you go. There we go. Through you, Your Worship. The strategy will be intensification, and that is to be sort of built up over a period of the 30 years, so starting at 40% intensification and finishing at 60% in 30 years' time. So over the complete 30 years of the strategy, it would be 50% of all development, at a minimum, would be intensification as well. I guess it's key.
And through you, Your Worship, this program has started with our medium density plan change, so Plan Change 5, which is the decisions are now out in the community for appeal, for the appeal process. But we also have the local area plans, which is the second phase of this medium density strategy. So looking at what areas beyond the 400 metre walkable catchment, which is the first stage of this Plan Change 5, what areas are going to be appropriate for intensifying and creating, those more intensive community-focused hubs throughout our city. And that's some important work that Rebecca Sutton, I think, has spoken to you about, that that's gone out for community engagement now and has had a really positive response. So those steps are all in place to try and get that level of intensification up and running as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Thank you for that explanation. Now, Councillor Corbyn, are you and Councillor Monteputo Hendry, are you comfortable with those recommendations, or do you wish to make any changes?
I'm happy with the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Motuputa Hendry. Thank you. Would you like a right of reply, Councillor Corbyn?
Yes, I'd like to say the future development strategy has taken some time to get to this point. It's been a long journey. The principles behind it are very solid, and I particularly like the intensification. That's a core component of it. I think the recommendations that we've added today actually bring it back to the principles that were at the start of the future development strategy, which is protecting the fertile land and also not building in hazardous zones. So I'm happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Corbyn. Councillor Motuputa Hendry, did you wish to have a right of reply?
Thank you. Don't really like speaking. Yeah, just everything that I stand for is protecting our soils and protecting our people. So if we didn't change what was up here, it wouldn't stand by anything that I stand for. So thank you.
Thank you, councillors. So we have a move and a second, and we have a direction. I'm going to put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Carried unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Moving on, thank you very much. Big vote of thanks to the team and the enormous amount of work that's gone into this work. And I look forward to our community having their say over the next month, and I know that some of them are waiting anxiously, even in this chamber, to have their say. So we'll look forward to hearing the next part of the process and our community having their say on this draft future development strategy. Right, thank you. Councillors, moving on to item 7, please. Welcome to Mr. John Payne. This is a report on the administration of Hastings District Council policies and practices in relation to control of dogs for the year 1st of July 2024 to the 1st of June 25. Thank you, Mr. Payne. Did you want to add anything to your report?
Not working. Good afternoon. Thank you. I'll just take it that the report's...
Sorry, and we have Mr. Peterson here.
He's not here.
He's not here
Unfortunately,
today.
he's sick. Yeah.
Oh,
He's sick today,
okay. I'm
so-
sorry to hear that.
I'd just like to point out, in terms of the attachment, that, you know, you always get fluctuations, but quite frankly, when we look at about 5 years ago, we were virtually 700 more complaints than we get now. So even though we've got a little bit of a fluctuation here, especially in terms of persons attacked, if you add the 3 acts of aggression, they will virtually come to the same. So I can tell you that the slight increase in attacks were nothing of any serious nature, hence the lesser prosecutions that were taken as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. Any questions, councillors? Any comments? This is a requirement under the Act, as we've heard. Councillor Kerr.
I appreciate this as a formal report, but I just actually really want to acknowledge the team. Clinton, please pass back to your team. It's the little things they do on every single day that makes a difference. And as the owner of a couple of pound puppies, I know that they really do care for the dogs that come through and are able to be rehomed. So from me, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Did you want to move?
Motion, apparently.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Butto. Thank you. And no further questions or comments, councillors? Thank you. I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you. That's carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Payne. Item 8. This is receiving the petition of older persons free parking. And I'd now like to welcome Ms. Stetner and Councillor Sholom.
I'd like to declare a conflict.
Thank
and
you.
Step away from the table.
Councillor Sholom is on the Positive Ageing Trust, and she's, you might have to, do you need to? No. Okay. And Louise, did you want to outline anything in your report?
No, thank you, Madam Chair. Happy to take it as read.
Okay, so we have a report here. Councillor Nixon.
Yes, I felt I couldn't find it in there, an indication of other councillors, what their experience has been of this.
So all we're doing today is receiving a petition.
Just receiving it?
And the recommendations are, if you wish council officers to do any future work on this petition,
missed
to
that
look,
point.
consider
Thank you.
the option
that's
of
good.
free parking for older person.
I just wanted
Thank
to
you.
make sure.
Councillor Lawson has moved and Councillor Fowler has seconded. Any further comments or questions? I'll put those recommendations. Oh, sorry, Councillor Kerr.
Could we have in that report when we're next due to do a wider parking study or review? Because I'm not sure when that's next due.
Can I acknowledge Mr Ron Wilkins, the President of Grey Power, and all his hard mahi that he does in our community, bringing this petition to the table today. He certainly has our older persons front in mind everything he does. He was in the office with the team yesterday for an hour and a half, going through all the older persons' issues, and he's very, very dedicated. I want to acknowledge him and his hard work. So I have a recommendation. I have a mover and a second. I'm going to put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you. That's carried. Thank you very much, Louise. Now we go to item 9, the review of Civic Honours Awards criteria. Also for you, Louise. I would like to invite the Chair of Civic Development, Councillor Dixon, to outline this paper. It has come from your committee, as I understand it. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. On the 8th of October, we went through all of our criteria, and we were concerned that this year, because of Cyclone Gabriel, that some of the people that were deserving of an award for meritorious service during the cyclone may well have been missed out in the initial stages. So we've decided to include that in there for this coming year. And just to let councillors know that the awards nominations will open this year on the 7th of January and they will close on the 14th of February. So go out there and find all of those that you believe are deserving for an award, because those awards are going to be in May to avoid the election period later in the year. I'd like to move the recommendations, Your Worship.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Any further questions on this paper? Comments?
Comment?
Yes, certainly.
The reason, two reasons I'm happy to support this. One is I agree that in the stress and chaos after Cyclone Gabrielle, there will be people who haven't had their name put forward. But secondly, that this awards list does come back to council for a final approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. So no further comments. I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you. That's carried. And thank you for bringing this to our attention. Absolutely worthy. Now, Lagoima requests the Local Government Official Information Meetings Act 1987 update. Miss Detner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm happy to take the report as read. Has been a bit of a quieter period. That's just a summary of what came through.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Butto, second. Any questions on the Lagoima request, councillors? No, I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you. That's carried. Item 11 and 12, there are no minor or urgent items today to consider. Now we move on to a public excluded item, item 14, and I'll invite now Mr Cameron or Mr Allen, Mr Bickle back, to just explain to us why this item should be in a public excluded agenda, please.
Through you, Madam Chair, this agenda item is recommended to be heard in public exclusion. It's Council giving consideration to potential future disposal or acquisition of assets, so it's recommended at this time while you consider the situation and associated commercially sensitive information, it's appropriate to be heard in public excluded to protect any potential future negotiation positions.
Land negotiations. Okay, thank you. Any questions? Thank you, councillor Sholem. Second, councillor Butto. Any further questions on the reason this is a PX item of the agenda? I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you, that's carried. Now I ask any members of the public, please, thank you for your coming with us today. To our members of our community who may have joined us, thank you very much for being online with us today, and this concludes the formal part of our public part of our meeting. Mā te wā. Kia ora. Did I put that recommendation? Did I? Can't remember. Did I put that recommendation?